Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IT Leaders. I am Doug Feast, the founder. Everybody see the video okay?
I can. Good morning, Doug.
Morning. I'm glad to have all of you with us this morning. We've got two great speakers today. Want to cover some of the housekeeping, like we always do, announcements at the beginning of the meeting. So let's go ahead and get started. This is our 5th year with IT Leaders. I love the fact that you're all here. I love the fact that you want to work on your leadership skills on an ongoing basis. And I hope we can support those efforts as we move forward. Why are we here and who are we? This group is designed for CIOs, VPs of IT, directors and managers, and those who are interested in leadership roles. We keep the sales reps out, other than sometimes leaders who are responsible for technology sales teams attend as leaders rather than business development folks. What do? It's networking, and that'll be a lot easier once we go back to in-person in September. It's mentorship, finding a mentor or being a mentor, and it's also developing leadership skills, which our speakers support by their messaging. Couple of details, please mute your microphone unless I ask you a question. Please turn your video on. One of the reasons we want your video on is just to make sure that you're engaged at some level. I know not everybody can do that at every minute when the kids walk in, when the dog walks in, but it's good to know that we're a group. And let me note that our next meeting, September 21, right? Always the 3rd Tuesday of every other month. We are going to be in person at Carmel. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. Please take a screenshot or two today, if you would, and send those to me. You can text those to me at my phone number there, or you can send them in any fashion you want. Doug.feast@expedient.com is my email. If you'd like to use a hashtag, ITLeadersIndy is the way to do that. There's a couple of places you can find us online. The LinkedIn company page is what a lot of people use. That's maintained by Rusty Maynard, and that's Rusty's picture there. We post events that are upcoming on this page, as well as on itleaders.org. We also like to cross-promote other events. So if there's something that you're doing that involves IT people that you'd like to get out to this group, then email this to Rusty at his email below, so we can make sure that we're promoting better IT in the entire community. We also maintain a private group for you to communicate with each other. We moderate who's part of that. You need to be an IT leader to be involved in that. You can talk to each other. And please note that both the group and the company page have the name IT Leaders Indianapolis. So pay attention to which one you're logging into. The group's moderated, so you'll actually put in a request to be involved, and then Rusty or I will approve it. And again, the website is a great place to go, or the LinkedIn company page, itleaders.org/Indianapolis. And we also have a Twitter presence too. Mentors. To most people my age that I know, a big part of their success has been mentorship. They've been mentees or mentors, and I think the benefit is reciprocal and goes both ways. So if you're interested, we've got a very simple approach. It's a 1-page rules of engagement. There's about a dozen mentors who've expressed interest, and if you're interested in that, just email me and I'll send you the information. There is a sister meeting for IT leaders called the IT Leadership Boot Camp. The amazing Lou Russell runs that curriculum-based Leadership 101 course. It typically happens twice a year. And the next cohort is not scheduled quite yet, but will occur this fall. It's $975 for about 20 hours of content. There's 4 sessions, and it's emotional intelligence. It is problem-solving skills, and it's a lot of tabletop exercises. So it's a great class. Lou Russell's amazing, as I mentioned. She taught me when I was a leader at Methodist Hospital 20 years ago. And I've known her ever since. And I just love her way that she whispers to IT people. I call her the IT whisperer. So I think you get the message. This is a section of the announcements where I want you to speak up. Is there anybody who has open positions for IT leaders or doers in their organization? Please unmute yourself and just go ahead and speak up. Anyone with open positions that they'd like to fill?
I can start. This is Jim Patterson, or JP, as most people call me. I am with SMC Corporation here in Noblesville. Right now, our global IT team is in, I'd say, exponential growth. We've got about 45 positions open at this particular time for this location, wow, as well as about 20 globally. So don't want to list them all now because that would take up all of our time. But definitely reach out to me if you know somebody that is looking. Mike Loggins is our fearless leader here. And kind of his rule is we're looking for awesome first. We'll find the position for you second.
Awesome, Jim. How do they get a hold of you?
J Patterson at smcusa.com, or you can hit me up through LinkedIn as well. Either way is perfectly fine. And I will put in the chat my email address.
Sounds great. Anyone else who has open positions that they're looking to fill?
Doug, I'll go ahead.
Please.
So I'm Chris Henderson from the state of Indiana, and we have a number of different positions open and a number of positions that'll be opening up very soon. Workforindiana.in.gov is our website. And we have everything from communications specialists on the, more on the telecommunications and mobile side, to identity and automation engineers. And we will probably have some, with some changes to staffing in other agencies, data scientist positions opening up, as well as leadership roles. So if you're interested in anything, I typically post to the IT leaders community anytime I see a position opening. And if you have a particular interest, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put both the website and then my email address in the chat.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else?
Sure. This is Quentin Gurney here. I'm at Anthem, and we always have a number of positions open in IT. Right now, we've got quite a few opportunities in security, looking especially for some cloud security architects with cross-platform experience. That'd be great. Of course, I imagine most of you are looking for the same thing, so we'll all get together and cry that we can't find anybody.
Thanks, Quentin. Anyone else? Okay, let's switch the tables here. Who is looking for their next position right now? Please speak up and keep it short.
Tom Shocks here is.
Hi, Tom. Nice to see you. What are you looking for?
Well, I've been a director of technology, as you well know, for all these years. So I'm trying to get back in the groove of that. I've had many great interviews with a lot of great companies. I've got 4 on the pipe right now. It's just getting everybody to pull the plug, It just seems like you interview and then 2 months later you're still interviewing, Yeah. Pretty frustrating, but that's just par for the course.
Very true. Yeah, you've been through a lot of acquisitions too in the companies, and that's through no fault of your own. So we appreciate that. Anybody else? Final chance. All right, let's move on. Finally, I just want to express my gratitude. IT leaders wouldn't exist without the company that I work for, Expedient. Expedient lets me spend my time and their money building and operating this community because we believe in great IT leaders along with great IT infrastructure. Expedient is an infrastructure services company. Multi-cloud operating models is typically where we're helping clients now decode the mystery and the complexity on multi-cloud. So if you're interested in talking about Expedient, we'd be happy to talk further. Thanks, Expedient. I want to talk about upcoming events, and then we'll get started with the speakers. I've got two events coming up here. The first one I'm excited about, August 4th. Expedient and Cohesity are sponsoring a clay pigeon shoot out at Indiana Gun Club up by Fisher's. If you're interested, you need to be a director, manager, VP of IT, and a CIO, just like this group. And we're going to be running that in the afternoon. So we've got limited number of seats. If you're interested, the time to sign up is now. You may want to take a picture of this with your phone so that you can nail down the URLs, but please join us at the Gun Club. The September 21 issue of IT Leaders, the bi-monthly peer group, is going to feature 2 CIOs from big companies here in Indianapolis. And I'll talk about that a little later, but that's going to be in person at Expedient. And I'm looking forward. We're going to start at 8 like we used to. There's going to be breakfast and networking catered by Jonathan Bird's, best biscuits and gravy in the city, in my opinion. And we will be in room 109, the big room that we've always met in back there. So our plan right now is to support the people who can join virtually but can't join in person, is to make an audio recording available to people who sign up for the meeting, and also to get anyone who signs up the presentations that the 2 presenters have. So you'll have the ability to consume the content after the fact. I just don't have enough staff to do a live presentation. If you want to contribute in that fashion to do live, then let's talk. Please reach out to me. But we're going back to in-person, that good old-fashioned networking, analog, I call it. A couple of other upcoming events that may be of interest to you. Next Tuesday, a week from today, starting at 8 at Expedient in the same room that we'll be meeting in September, I and a couple of other business leaders are doing a session for CEOs and business owners and CFOs. And any of you who are in attendance this morning, feel free to bring your own CFO or bring your own business owner, if you will, please. This session is going to be a couple of hours, and it's really focused on IT issues, staffing issues, revenue or sales. And it's really more of a 360 across the organization to help business leaders. We're seeing unbridled growth right now here in the Indy area. And how are you going to deal with it is the question. So this is a great opportunity. If you can't come, please pass this along to your CFOs and CIOs, but it will be in the room. And we're hoping to have an audio recording available. I don't have all the equipment quite yet. As you know, everything's back ordered, but that's our goal. The other thing is Midwest Contingency Planners. They are an old group here in Indy. I've been attending their meetings for years. They meet 4 times a year, and this is really focused on IT professionals who are responsible for business continuity and disaster recovery in their organizations. And those words have taken on new meaning since COVID. So if you are interested in learning how they show up and what they're doing and the materials that they have access to, this is a great meeting. mcpweb.org is the group. And we've got a few people who attend IT Leaders who typically come to this. Oops, I forgot to update this slide. The next meeting is September 21. September 21. And we are featuring Jose Martinez and Mike Mead, 2 CIOs of 2 very large insurance companies here. And I'm going to be interviewing them on their digital transformation efforts. What's been beautiful, what's been ugly, and quite a few in between issues. You know, digital transformation means different things to different people. Modernizing apps and better customer and internal customer experiences is where most of the focus is for most of the clients that we talk to. Registration will be up for that event later this week, so make sure you mark your calendar for that. I have got some marketing turnover in Expedient, so my registration page may take a few extra days to come up, but don't forget about this meeting because it's going to be a great one. Let's talk about today's speakers, and then I'll get out of the way and let them go. Ashley Walters is going to be speaking about strategic execution today. Ashley is founder and chief growth expert of the Waltline Group. And our guest CIO speaker is Tracy Barnes, who is the CIO of the state of Indiana Office of Technology. Glad to have him. He's going to be talking about the intersection of politics and technology. Tracy and Ashley, you both should be co-hosts now if I'm operating Zoom correctly. Ashley, you are up. Thanks everybody again for joining.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for having me today. Let me get my presentation up and rolling here for everyone. Just a second. Oops. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Looks good, Ashley.
All right. So yeah, thank you once again for having me. I am very excited about strategic execution. I feel like strategic execution is kind of that game changer piece that often gets missed. So I hope today what I share can help you and your teams really get to that next level and help you and your business win. So a little bit of interaction here on what we have. What do you guys see in this first picture I put up?
Please respond in the chat if you would.
And Doug, I'm going to have you help me moderate that because I can't actually see the chat on my screen.
Team and teamwork we see.
Mm-hmm.
Sports team. Team seems to be a common theme.
Yeah. So, and what I see is a high performing team here. This is the 2016 USA winning Olympic gold basketball team. And, you know, these guys, they only come together for a short amount of time. They've got to train. They've got to have the right strategy. They've got to have the right plan. Everybody knows their role, right? And they've really got to be able to execute and make it happen. We're keeping score, obviously, by the score of the game and with their medals. And at the end of the day, this really isn't much different than your business. You're in the business of keeping score. You want to win, and we want you to win. So let's get into that a little bit further. We're going to talk about strategic execution and why it's important today, and really help you build that higher performing team. Just a little bit about me. My story begins in Anderson, Indiana. I grew up in a General Motors family, and I always knew that I wanted to help people solve their problems. So I took that love for solving problems to Purdue, and I majored in computer information systems because I always knew I wanted to be between the people and the technology. And from there, I moved on to Eli Lilly and Company because they make medicines that help people. And I was fortunate enough to get really introduced into that project and program management world there and thought, hey, this is great. And I'll tell you, I've spent a lot of my career there. But in 2003, I did the unthinkable from a tech perspective. And I stepped out of that tech world for 11 years to stay home with my kids. I've been back at it for 7 years now. And I'll say I've caught up on everything I've missed and relearned everything that I learned so I could make sure that I was up and running and really making a difference in the roles that I had taken on. Community Health Network was fabulous. I got to be part of their Care Connect organization. and really learned what customer experience was all about. Fell in love with that idea and got to take that on to Allegion, where I was a customer experience manager and also helped manage the sales, marketing, and customer care initiatives. Allegion was fresh off a spinoff from Ingersoll Rand when I joined, so it was a lot of fun. I like to say it was a well-funded startup because I like to say I got 10 years of experience in 4 because we were just moving, blazing at the speed of light there for a while. And I picked up my MBA there as well and ran a custom app dev team for 2 years. I was ready for something new though, and I moved on to DDI, and DDI had a whole host of other exciting opportunities for me. We were on our 5th rewrite of a SaaS product that we hadn't quite got to market. We thought we were technically sound. A couple weeks in, I figured out we definitely were not. And we had our customers that were mad at us because at this point in the game, they thought we were delivering. Our board was ready to yank our funding. And we had to figure out from the ground up what we were going to do to fix it. And I figured out at that point in the game, we brought in Agile, we brought in that transparency. We had to have the right communications, and we quite frankly had to rebuild trust not only within our organization, but also with our board and those customers. And that made me realize this is what I want to do. This is what I really want to do, is help people, and specifically help leaders build the right people, processes, and plans, and get those in place so they can really grow and scale their teams. So I hope what I share today will really help you as well. So earlier this year, I sent out a survey to the CIO network, and I asked them, how do you spend most of your time at work? Well, this was pretty clear to me, and a kind of an eye-opener, that 70% of those folks, between fighting fires, executing the daily work, and trying to find a strategy that works, is where everyone was struggling. If you look at this graph, only 10% were really focusing on growth and efficiencies, which ultimately is where I know we all hope we can be. The second question I ask is, what's the biggest issue you're trying to solve? And it came down to 70% were struggling to select and align and communicate around those top priorities. 60% were struggling with a healthy and accountable culture, and 40% were still struggling on developing that strategy. And I know a lot of you on this call, you're either the one struggling with those priorities, struggling with the culture. So hopefully we can get you on a better path. So most companies, when you think about it, they know, what you're doing for the next 30 days. You know where you're going the next 90 days, maybe in the next year. You have a core purpose. You know why your company exists. Some of you have what we call a BHAG. And this is a Jim Collins term. If you're not familiar with Jim Collins, he's kind of the father of all management studies. And it stands for big, hairy, audacious goal. And it means you know where you're going to be in the next 10 to 25 years. Some of your teams have what we call a 5-year swag. And 5 years is a ways out. Does anybody see the problem with this picture here? You can unmute and tell me, or you can chat and Doug will tell me.
There's a big gap to get to those big, hairy, audacious goals.
There most certainly is. We refer to this as the valley of death, because a lot of companies start out great, right? They know where they're going, we're rolling. But how do we ultimately get there and keep growing and scaling? And that's where a lot of organizations get stuck. So what I like to do is help companies put together what we call a 3HAG. And 3HAG stands for 3-year highly achievable goal. And why I love the 3HAG is it's going to tie together your short term and your long term into what we're calling the near term. Because 3 years out is far enough out that you're still going to get towards where you want to go, but it's close enough that you can still back yourself back in and have a plan for where you need to go in an agile manner, of course, that has the right priorities lined out for your 1-year mark and your 90 days. And you're making sure that you're iterating. So you're hitting those and evolving your business to get to the place you need to be and hit those big goals that you need to hit. 3HAG was developed by Shannon Susko. You can check out her book, 3HAG Way. What she did is she started, scaled, and sold 2 different tech companies, Paradata and Subservio. And when she sold Subservio in 2011, it was the second biggest mid-market deal on Wall Street that year. And why that is because she sold it exactly on her 3HAG. She knew where her company had been the last 3 years. She knew where it was going the next, and she could have the right conversations with not only her board, but the folks that were buying her company and say, hey, you have confidence in where you're going, and we know where this company is going to go, and this is going to be a great investment for you. And think about the power that could lead to the conversations you could have with your stakeholders and investors. We call the 3HAG the stepping stone to winning. Just a little bit more about the 3HAG. 3HAG really is a strategic execution system that's driving growth and confidence and predicting the future of your company and allowing you to make it happen. And I think that's what's different about 3HAG. It's giving you the how. I think there's a lot of plans out there that talk about the why and the what, but ultimately when you get down to the how, people struggle with that. And I feel like this framework gives people a great way to get there in an agile manner. And as a leader, our goal is to simplify your life. We draw out your strategy in pictures. And pictures are easy for everybody to understand, right? And those pictures get you alignment for where you're going. They're going to focus your people, which is ultimately going to give you clarity and confidence in your direction. And my favorite part is it rolls with you. Yeah, I hear a lot of people say, you know, Ashley, 3HAG, 3 years out, I can't even imagine. I'm just starting up. I'm only 2 months in. I don't know what's going on. But my challenge to you is if you don't start somewhere and draw a line in the sand, how can you prove yourself right or wrong for where your organization could go? So with this system, since it rolls with your business, you're having your huddles, you're having your weekly meetings, you're checking in monthly to make sure you're still on track. What do I need to do to meet my quarter goal? And every quarter you're saying, hey, does this 3HAG still make sense? And what am I going to do for the next 90 days to move my company closer to that? Companies that are using this system are averaging 3 times top line growth and 2 times the amount of cash in the bank in that 3-year goal. So part of that is, what do you do to set yourself up to be a successful company? And again, this comes from Jim Collins' philosophies of you've got to learn together as a team. Leaders are learners, right? And each one of you on this call is definitely a leader. You've got to have the right disciplines. And those disciplines are driven by the right routines. And you've got to have an accountability mechanism, which I'll call the scoreboard. And since 60% of those survey results said that we were struggling getting that healthy and accountable culture, we know we all need a little bit of help here. First resource I want to bring out is an oldie but a goodie. And this is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. As we talked about at the beginning of this call, your organizations, there's change right now. You're growing, you're scaling. Things are great in Indy. So, but every time you bring somebody new onto your team, you got to start over in that Tuckman sequence of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And let's be honest, we don't all get to performing, do we? We've all been part of teams that never happened. So by doing this, you're bringing in trust to your organization. And when you have trust, your folks can be vulnerable. You've got that psychological safety element there. And once you have that, you're having real conversations. Maybe we're talking about the brutal facts of what's really going on. But since there's trust there, you're open to that, and your people are open to having the right conversations, which means you can commit and get clarity around where you're going and what you're going to do, which ultimately leads to accountability and your team hitting their goals. The other 2 items actually really go hand in hand, since 70% of businesses, we're really struggling with our execution. I think accountability and execution are really just like this. They are totally together because you can't really execute well without accountability. So to have better execution, we've got to talk about our priorities. We've got to be able to set the right priorities and make sure that they align not only to our quarterly goals, but our 1-year goal and back to that 3HAG and BHAG. So every quarter you can say, we're moving in the right direction. We've got to have a scoreboard that says we're tracking the right data and widgets. And I know we're all IT folks. I love data. I'm guessing you do too. So let's figure out how to make sure we're using data to your advantage. And obviously the communication rhythms to make sure that you can make those decisions better and faster so your company is ultimately moving faster. Oops, apologize. All right, so back to those priorities and alignment. We talked about 70%, you're not there. So let's take a minute and look at this. These 90-day priorities, they ultimately have to line all the way back up when we think about this picture. And I want to challenge everybody. And I know this is a big problem, but when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I know you're getting hit over the head left and right by your customers and your business partners, but firm priorities are what enables your team to deliver. Best practices, 3 to 5 priorities for your business. Your sub-team's priorities line up to those, but 3 to 5 priorities. We all know we eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? Priorities are the exact same way. And they have to have a clear start and end point. You know, in our world, this is definition of done. What's really done? How do we focus on the outcomes? How do we derive clear ownership of them? And how do we align them all the way back up like we just discussed? And I like SMART priorities. Show of hands. Everybody set a SMART goal, right? Yep, perfect. We're going to do SMART priorities today. So specific, measurable, actionable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So when we talk about that, here are our 3 priorities we are focused on for this quarter. And they are in this order. We're going to release version 1.6 of our software product by September 26th. That's specific, what we're doing. We know how to measure that. Did we hit September 25th? Did it go in or not? That's timely. And because our teams work together to set this, it's achievable and realistic. Same for our next one. We're going to generate 350 leads by August 16th. We know what we need to do, how we need to do it, and we've got to time around that. And our teams decided on it together, so we know we're going to deliver. And then finally, to sell 96 products or subscriptions by September 20th. Once again, it fits that format. You set yourself up for success when your team is setting those priorities together and you're having the right conversations because your team wants to deliver. But Ashley, new things keep coming up. As I said, there's no lack of things hitting you left and right every day. But those things that are hitting you left and right are the fires you're fighting. When you continually fight the fires and you're not focused on the priorities, you struggle to get where you want to go. And my challenge is, how do we have better conversations? And really, when somebody comes to you with something, how does it affect our current priorities and scope? I know this is a little bit project management 101, but I feel like it's a hard conversation to sometimes have. And if we do what you're bringing forward, what are we not going to do? I think in IT, especially, we're yes people. Whether we like it or not, a lot of times we are the yes people that are expected to deliver and make sure the business gets where they need to. And we want to partner with them. But we've got to have the right conversations on how do we make sure that we're really focusing on what's important and doing what needs to be done. And really, does this request belong in our priority discussion for next quarter? Or maybe it belongs in our backlog so we can look and make sure that we are going to hit where we need to. Again, our job as leaders is to make sure at the end of every quarter, we can say, yeah, we're closer to not only our 1HAG, but our 3HAG and our BHAG, because we did the right work this 90 days. So now that we have our priorities, let's talk about some metrics and widgets. This is the data fun. So every company, I think, hands down, revenue, expenses, profit, cash. We all know that. We're all tracking those things, right? But what we're not tracking often is those non-fiscal numbers, and how we can make those work for our business is amazing. So I'm going to define that as your widgets. And your widgets are really how your business makes money. And whether that's solutions implemented, leads captured, products or subscriptions sold, money collected on your contracts, we've got to figure out those things. When your folks can align around a number, and I think this is really a problem in IT. I know I remember when I was working for an organization at one point, we missed our sales goal by 3 million. Well, I sat back and said, well, what could I have done? Well, at the point in time, 3 million was really 10 more subscriptions. And when your people can put that into terms of what those numbers are, they're much more relatable and you're much more likely to get traction. And again, those numbers align right back up and support your priorities. So you're measuring the right things every quarter. And we make sure that that progress is visible to everyone. And now that we have our priorities, we're going to put them into a 13-week sprint plan. And as we talked about, priority 1 for this quarter was to release the next version of our software. Allie's going to own that. Now, you guys all measure however you want to measure here. I put an example out here, you do you. But I just did story points because that was an easy thing for us to talk about as an easy measurable or an easy thing to use as a widget. We're delivering a release with 60 story points. That's 10 points a sprint for the next 6 sprints. You've got a way to measure it. It was actionable. You can say, did we hit that or not? The next one, to generate 350 leads by August 16th. Joe said he would like to own that this quarter. And Joe, although Joe owns it, we're all working together and our team is supporting Joe to make sure that happens. So number of leads, that's 50 leads per the next 7 weeks. And that's how we're going to hit our date and make that happen. And finally, we're going to sell 96 products or subscriptions, whichever is applicable for your business. Maybe it's even services. And we know Lynn said she would own that for us. Everyone's going to rally to help Lynn make sure that happens. And that's really 8 per week for the next 12 weeks. So knowing that we hit that. So now that we have a baseline, we're ready to put it into the scoreboard, right? And start keeping score for our company. Because always, if you're not keeping score, how do you know if your team's winning? Business is a game. For an Olympics, you get a coach. For your business, you got to get a coach or play your game. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to know each and every day of every week of every month. Are you closer to what you said you were going to do? And how do you need to iterate? How do you need to fluctuate? What do you need to do to make sure that you and your team are hitting your goals? A scoreboard is going to enable you to do just that. You can do as simple as a piece of paper on the wall if everybody's back in the office. I use metronome growth systems. As my tool of choice and with my clients, ultimately, I don't care what you use, but you've got to use something so you make sure that you're getting where you need to go at the end of the day. I know it's hard to measure things. Nobody wants to talk about the measurements, but the measurements are what empower you. They give you the data to have the right conversations if you need to iterate, and really, the data allows you to win. And we're going to reinforce those winning with our communication rhythms. Your Scrum team does an awesome job already. They get together for their 15-minute call every day. Can you imagine the power if you and your teammates did that? What do you think would happen? How much more do you think you could accomplish? At the end of each week, it's a tactical meeting. And for us, that's almost like a retro. What went well? What didn't go so well? Where are we on our metrics? And what do we need to do different next week to make sure that we're hitting our goals? Take that information. If your CEO isn't willing to do it, pop that into an email to your team. You want to talk about an engagement tool? When your folks know, they see the email from you and they're like, oh, they care. They're telling me where exactly we are, where we need to go. And I know my role in helping us get there. And I can't wait to figure out how I can help next week. So I make sure that we're further and faster at the end of the following week. Of course, monthly, confirming your strategy, checking in. Are we going to hit our 90-day plan? If not, what do we need to change? How do we iterate and evolve to make sure we're getting there? A quick town hall to summarize it up, keep your engagement going, grow that accountability, keep everybody on the same page. And then, of course, quarterly, confirming your strategy, making sure you're still going where you think you're going. And hey, I've got the data that says I'm going to blow this 3HAG out of the water. Or, hey, you know what? We're really struggling here. We've had a change in our market. So-and-so popped up down the street. We need to change our strategy a little bit for the next 90 days so we can get back on track. Or maybe it's even we need to iterate our 3HAG so we make sure that it still makes sense for our business. And then, of course, annually getting together and doing the deep dive on your strategy, making sure you're still syncing. And your 3HAG just became your 2HAG. So you get to set a new one. And ultimately, you walk out of that meeting with a new 3HAG and your priorities for the next 90 days and a strategy that's setting you up to win. You're tying it all together. Because as we all know, it's really 1% plan and 99% behavior, or 1% plan and 99% how. We've talked about a lot of those hows today and how to help your teams get there and be that high-performing business team or high-performing IT team that you need them to be, and to help your business get to where they're supposed to be at the end of the day. I want you to win your gold. Your business deserves to win the gold. As a quick recap of the tools we covered here today, I talked about strategic execution from Shannon Cio. That's covered in 3HAG way. We talked about aligning around your team and getting the dysfunction out and getting accountability and results through Patrick Lencioni's book. Execution routines, metronomics by Shannon Cio. And I know I've kind of used that metronome term a lot here. You, as leaders, are the metronome of your team. You set the beat. You set what's going to happen. And then finally, the accountability mechanism, which is that scoreboard, which I use metronome growth systems, but you can use whatever works for your team. I'm so glad I got to talk to each and every one of you today. Thank you so, so much. If you have any questions about anything I covered, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to hop on a quick call, help you solve whatever problem you're hitting. And I want you and your team to succeed. Let me know if you need any help. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. A couple of questions before we let Tracy have the floor. What do you suggest as a template or an outline for the meetings that you showed in the grid a couple of slides ago?
Yeah, so I can send that out. You always start every single meeting with good news. And good news is how you get your cohesion going in your team. And this is like a 2-minute or less. Everybody kind of gets 15 seconds. What's going on? You're going to touch in on exactly what's going on and those priorities and metrics. And you're going to touch in on kind of what's next. What I will do is, Doug, I can actually, while we're still talking here, I can get one of those templates, or I could send that template to you and you can send it out to everybody that attended. I'm happy to share that.
Yeah, let's do that. I'd be happy to include that in the follow-up email.
Yeah.
Final question. Have you compared the 3HAG, the B3-in-1 and QHAG to other planning methodologies such as OKRs or Hoshin Conry that Toyota uses?
Yeah, and so I think the sweet spot, I haven't done a lot of comparing on Hoshin Conry, but when you think about your metrics and your OKRs are really kind of hand in hand. We're really talking the same language there. It's just kind of calling them two different things. When I looked at different stuff, when I decided this is what I wanted to do, I did look at a few different methodologies. I looked at EOS, I looked at Scaling Up, and some of the other business plans. And And this is what made sense to me as a tech person. This spoke to me for how we function and what it looks like for us to grow and scale organizations. And that's why I'm very passionate about this. And, Shannon, who is our founder of this methodology, she has clients that have been doing this for years. It's proven. She has Intel doing pieces and parts of this. She has a company in Canada that's actually been on doing this for 9 years and just getting continued result after result after result, because it is a proven system that truly gets you where you want to go.
Final question, briefly, do you have any thoughts or strategies on how to focus leadership down from 20 or 30 priorities to the suggested 3 to 5?
Yeah. And I know this is a hard one. This is a culture shift.
Yeah.
This truly is a culture shift, and saying, if you want to go back and look at the research, pull a Good to Great by Jim Collins. Look at that book. See how those companies win. When you think about it, the companies that truly win are focused on delivering 1 or 2 key things at a time. They're not taking on the world. And when you think about those companies that are really the long-lasting companies that are here for decades upon decades, they all started off doing one thing really well. And your priorities need to line back down to that as well. It's the whole thing. You've got to make sure you're focused in and clear on where you're going, so you can really eventually grow and scale out into those other markets or verticals or different priorities. But focus on what gets your business cash register rolling and making your money first, and then focus on the rest later.
Excellent. Ashley, thanks so much for sharing with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Attendees, Ashley will be sending her presentation and the collateral information to me. I will forward that to you in a few days in a follow-up email. All right, 1 down, 1 to go. Our guest CIO speaker is Tracy Barnes, CIO of State of Indiana's Indiana Office of Technology. Tracy, the floor is yours. Feel free to unmute and take over.
Thanks, Doug. I kind of want to yield my time back to Ashley. That was some pretty informative information, I think, for all of us. But really wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the group today and to share a little bit of my story and also talk about as I thought about what to speak about, what to talk through. Really looking at a lot of you guys out there as peers and as kind of partners in this fight and challenge to continue to make technology not just a technical solution, but a tool that continues to enhance and improve our lives. The topics of that I face and deal with on a daily basis is how do we manage and control the world of politics and technology that I believe are aggressively starting to clash on an aggressive basis these days. And so really what I came back to was kind of putting this out there as, hey, a little bit of background about me and more of hopefully a plea for help and a call to action to all of you to kind of help us band together as technology leaders and as technicians and as what I see the new world of technology on the policy side, getting us engaged more into setting that guidance and leadership and direction from a real technology focus, as opposed to what I feel I see of the world of elected officials that don't understand a lot of what we do. So that's kind of where I'm going here. I only have 2 slides to show, and they'll be towards the end here. I'll just kind of ramble and yap for a minute if that's all right. But those that don't know me, I got started, graduated here at Butler University, and actually started my career at the university implementing as an Oracle DBA, implementing PeopleSoft systems and such before traveling all over the U.S. and overseas, continuing to build that expertise as a PeopleSoft administrator and architect. And those were the days when ERP were really hot and important and cool. And really gave me a good sense of enterprise perspective for how to make sure organizations are truly looking across their entity as opposed to looking to solve one business problem at a time. But in doing that, I got a lot of exposure to multiple governments, multiple city governments, state governments, and even my time in the United Kingdom, other countries' governments and how they operate and how they flow. That led me to eventually starting my own company, which I had for about 12 years. And in that space, it was the transition that I made from being 90% technician to being 90% manager and owner, which was not easy to do. I think a lot of us as technicians realize that at some point we have to decide, are we gonna continue pushing buttons, or are we gonna transition to the, what I would say at this point, the dark side, and try to help lead and manage those that are continue to be the experts at pushing buttons. And I wish I would have had a lot of Ashley's information back then to understand, really talking about that leadership and those capabilities and how to really drive and create successful teams and such. And so I made that transition, and worked out well for me. It was a great time and opportunity to help see more of the perspective of how decisions are made, especially from a government and from a public education institution perspective, where finances and funding is not always easily available. I lean back on my tech background pretty heavily these days, and a lot that we think about is from a tech standpoint, it just makes sense to do it, right? There's no reason we can't make it happen. Technically, we can do it if we have enough time and resources. But something always continues and seems to get in the way on a regular basis, and that's often the other driving priorities that we're not aware of, and that folks that are in different positions are holding on to or leaning on and leaning against and such. And so eventually I ended up transitioning and out of my business and came over to work at the state. And that was in the 2015, 2016 era. And in a very short period of time, somehow miraculously ended up in the lieutenant governor's office as her chief of staff. That was a role that really opened my eyes to understanding, to getting a better understanding of the world of policy. It was my first time dealing with policy. It was my first interaction having to deal with massive and significant legislative involvement and input. Our lieutenant governor serves as the president of the Senate here in Indiana, one of the few states that has that authority. And so you start to see and understand a whole lot more of what's going on behind the scenes than what the news presents to you on a daily basis. When I came in that position, we had a couple of things that really stuck out to me that gave me some real quick introduction to policy. One of the first requests we had from a city up in Northwest Indiana was we had a low-income housing community that was being impacted by lead and arsenic chemicals in their soil. It was about close to a 300 unit housing facility. There were still tons of people living in that area. And they were asking us as a state to declare the area a disaster to try and help them get funding to get to a solution. That was an easy decision to make, right? It was, we see families being impacted. We see communities being decimated. There was still a school happening, operating on that property. It was a pretty easy decision for us to make. And we made that decision to ultimately help get those families out, get the community shut down, and they're in a process of rebuilding, I think, still to this day. But that was a very, very aggressive indoctrination in a policy that I had never had experience with before. And most of us that were just coming new into the administration were kind of dealing with for the first time from an emergency disaster perspective. Not long after that, also in my role, we oversaw the Office of Agriculture, the State Department of Agriculture. And we had a similar challenge that was put in front of us as well. The things that like a lot of us don't think about, but these are happening on a regular basis. There's a pesticide that, company Monsanto, now known as Bayer, makes that is very good at protecting and supporting crops, specifically corn and soybean crops. However, it is also a pesticide that when neighboring farmers are growing more soft cover crops, it can spread and decimate a neighbor's entire harvest and field. The industry reached out to us and asked us to weigh in on that one and to try and put a stop to the allowing that pesticide to be spread throughout Indiana. And that was a much harder decision to make, right? It was, unlike the lead contamination where we knew we had to do what was best for the community, this was more of a winner and loser type of situation, right? Is some folks would who relied upon that pesticide and it helped their crops grow better and it helped provide better protection for them, would have definitely been hurt if we would have disabled their ability to utilize it. How other folks who were relying on their crops not being impacted by it were fighting hard against it to try and find a way to make sure that they could continue their livelihoods and their family farms as well. And so that's where you start seeing policy start taking on a little bit of a different approach. And as an elected official, as an official in appointed positions, you start really looking into the mirror and trying to understand where are your priorities at, and where do I put my focus, and how do I make sure I am keeping the integrity of my soul and my spirit to make sure that I'm hopefully delivering and making a choice that is for the betterment of most people and those involved. And that's what kind of set the baseline for when we in the Lieutenant Governor's office decided to take on the topic of broadband, which I thought was going to be an easy activity, right? I mean, I think any one of us here, we're all, technicians, or at least technically capable, and understand the need for broadband and the need for stronger broadband and more reliable and more affordable and more accessible broadband throughout our state and throughout our nation. But it was definitely not as easy as I anticipated and thought that it might be. And it was actually quite the opposite. Got to see very quickly how many folks, and I say this very respectfully, right, not knowing who's all on the call here and where a lot of people's heads lie, but a lot of folks think we already have it. They believe that, the state is very well covered. There's enough providers out there. There's enough service out there. Most of the people that are complaining are just complaining because they can't get Netflix. I mean, I got to hear so many different perspectives, I'll say, that really started giving me challenging my thought of, okay, I think aren't we all supposed to focus on doing what's right? I mean, we know we have communities that especially living through this last year pandemic, as we switched to remote work for employees and primarily for students that were unable to access and had no opportunities to access service and coverage. But yet still there are folks aggressively fighting against that growth and expansion capabilities. And it was eye-opening for me, that's for sure. And not necessarily in a good way. It was extremely frustrating. Ultimately, we were able to push our program through and lots of meetings and fights and battles and testifying in front of our state Senate on multiple occasions to help them understand the challenges that we're facing, the missed opportunity from a development standpoint, workforce development, economic development, community development, and not being able to provide and ensure that there was quality service. And keep in mind, we did a lot of research to help people understand that this was not just about our rural areas who did have a significant disparity with the ability to access service. We still have a pretty significant volume of urban areas that don't have the ability to afford service. So while there's access, there's still the affordability challenge and problem that happens here in our own backyards. And I'll tell you exactly here within the circle of 465. I mean, it exists, and we have documented cases and issues where we're trying to find ways to help with that solution. That was to me the first intersection where I saw policy and unfortunately politics really become a stifling tenet for the growth and expansion of technology. And that's what I'm really kind of here hoping to, for one, expand my network with a lot of you guys, and hopefully, like I said, a bit of a call to action as well, to see that we need to get a lot more engaged from a technology standpoint with that world, to make sure that we are all protecting and hopefully enabling ourselves to continue fighting and providing the types of services and solutions that I know we all rely upon, and that a lot of our careers are based upon and such. Yeah, areas like internet connectivity, data privacy and protection, cyber protection, net neutrality, social media, freedom of speech, and many, many more. And I'm not here about pushing any political agenda, no opinion or perspective on these topics, but know that we can't live in our bubble, our protected bubble of technology anymore, like I think a lot of us used to. I know I used to as well. It's a 0-1, right? It's we do it, we don't do it. And the only thing that's stopping us from doing it is it's either technically not capable or we don't have the money to do it, right? And as the technically incapable list grows smaller and smaller because our tools are expanding and growing so much, now it's a matter of how do we make sure we have funding and focus and support to continue allowing for the innovation and growth and opportunity that technology provides. And I'll say this with a little bit of a caveat of still trying to make sure that we focus on the greater good of our communities and of our citizens, and realizing and knowing that technology is continuing to be a separator of haves and have-nots at this point, and having as much of an impact as it has been and will continue to. I see policy at the core definition is focused on changing behavior for the betterment of the citizens that we impact. And like I said, it's not something that our tech world has had to deal with very much historically, but we have to engage in it much more aggressively. If we don't, the decisions, the directives are going to continue to be led by elected officials that unfortunately have a very limited understanding of our space and the long-term impacts from their choices. And I'll tell you a great, just maybe an eye-opener or realization is the majority of our elected officials were first elected into their positions before the internet existed. And just think about that for a moment, right? That is, how do I sit down and explain to individuals the impact of their decision when a lot of them still have a very rudimentary understanding, if any at all, of what our world does, what's happening in our world, what we see our consumers and customers and users as needing. And unfortunately, the way the process works a lot is there's lobbyists that are coming from different angles that don't always share the full story. I mean, I think back to, I was doing some research on a paper and came across a story from the 1970s where the American Dental Association lobbied against the Department of Agriculture's goal to decrease the amount of sugar consumption in schools. And you think about that from a technology standpoint, and you wonder, who is behind and what is behind what may be creating limiting directives and guidance and limited funding for the things that we're doing here at the state. When you're looking at our social services agencies and the amount of support that they provide for children, for health, for mental health, for folks with addiction, our departments of revenue and the amount of tax funding and support and responding and refunding that they do on that side, even with our Office of Transportation and trying to support autonomous vehicles and the growth of digital transportation and automated transportation. I mean, all of these things start to come back to, you know, when we look at our folks, we see them as very capable and very possible. And the only thing stopping me from doing it is money and funding. But there's always a lot more at play behind the scenes that I think we need to get ourselves a lot more engaged and involved in. And I'm hoping that, you know, this group can be a part of that solution and a part of that that opportunity. I come back to a big question though, is how do we focus on that greater good of technology and provide that guidelines and guidance without stifling innovation and what people often see government as is that big brother trying to limit and control. A lot of what I'm seeing is happening as well. Cybersecurity is starting to be a major driver that is opening up the recognition and the need for, let's say, more governance, more broad governance from internet, from technical capabilities, from solutions, from tools and such. Data protection, we've seen, you know, the European passed the GDPR. We got state of California, state of New Jersey, and a couple other states starting to look at their own state-specific data privacy initiatives. It's come up here in Indiana. It has not been pursued at any specific aggressive level yet, but I would imagine it's on the horizon, and we should, you know, be aware and be in tune with that. But even as technicians, we're also citizens and constituents. And how do we want to make sure that the individuals that are making these decisions have both our personal best interest and our professional best interest in mind? Recently, you know, President Biden published an executive order that has a really strong focus on technology and cybersecurity and setting some standards for security protection and governance mostly for the private sector. There's some involvement with our world on the public sector side. Not enough, I think, yet, but I think it's probably a good start. I mean, starting somewhere. There's been federal legislation for the last 2 congressional sessions that have been trying to provide and set those standards on the public sector side at the state and local government level. And more importantly, it's been putting in an opportunity to provide funding for state and local governments to increase and enhance their cyber posture and their cybersecurity footprints. But yet we're struggling to get those types of bills moved forward and getting them heard and getting them passed and getting them addressed. Knowing that we're all living in communities that are struggling themselves with trying to figure out how do they manage and protect themselves and that guidance. This past session, we at the Indiana Office of Technology passed what I'll say was, well, definitely my first bill with the agency. I've only been with the agency about 16 months now. Called House and Road Act 1169, and in that bill, we were able to put legislation in place that just at now it requires local governments to at least let us know within 48 hours if they've had a cyber incident. Extremely basic, initial stepping stone, no punitive damages, no oversight or governance. The whole goal is on information sharing and awareness. And you let us know, and our goal is to anonymously share that information with our broader community so that folks know that there's a threat in the area, there's an active threat on a specific vector and a specific technology problem, and hoping to create more of that collaborative community, all focused on the ultimate goal, which is protection of our assets, both physical and digital, for the greater good of the community of the state of Indiana. And that's just the starting point for us. It's definitely an initial piece where hopefully down the road we'll see more growth and expansion, and hoping the state decides to get more involved and engaged with with local government protections and concerns. I shared with the governor a couple months back. I said, I wish I could tell you exactly how safe and secure we at the state are, right? But unfortunately, the visibility that I have is focused on our 3 buildings downtown. When there are 92 counties that all have a direct connect to my backbone because of their interactions with our auditor's office, our treasurer's office, and our secretary of state's office, and over 3,000 cities and towns that at some level have a direct connect to our backbone because of property taxes, the things that they do at their levels, and permitting and licensing. My ability to garner confidence in our secure platform and footprint and protection is limited. So unless you're willing to say, let's go out and figure out what's going on at these lower levels of interaction and intersection, we're going to be working in the blind for a while, knowing that the majority of our cities and towns, especially as you get into the non-metropolitan areas, are struggling for talent. They're struggling for resources. They're struggling for even awareness to know what they need to be thinking about and looking for. This is the real crux of the challenge that we're faced with, that I'm faced with on a daily basis, working with our elected officials, our governor on the executive branch, our legislators on the legislative branch, the plethora of lobbyists that seem to surround us all on a regular basis with their own industry expertise and value and opportunities that they provide. But I would be remiss if I didn't come back to this group and say, the more you can engage with a lot of these folks as well, the better perspective and the better understanding, hopefully they'll start to gain and garner and hear, and understanding the true impact of some of these decisions that they're making. It's pretty simple. Let me see if I can, I'm not a Zoom guy here, but let's see if we can figure this out.
We see it.
So really there's 3 pieces of what I call the 3-headed monster of government, right? There's regulation, which is agency driven. Some of you may have experienced that from requirements for controls and water supply, things of that nature. That's often directed by an agency like our Department of Environmental Management. It's usually not set in law, but it's an administrative law. The bigger footprint that is of concern is our legislative footprint on the legislation side. And here in Indiana, we have our 150 legislators that come into session 3 to 4 months a year at the start of each year. And I think you would all be a little bit shocked at the myriad of ideas that they bring forward for legislation. That it would be of benefit for all of us to have a little bit more awareness and visibility and insight into. And then lastly, the executive directive, often seen as an executive order from the governor or executive guidance from a city or county official. These are all areas where there are going to continue to be new rules, new regulations, new guidance, new directives that are going to be set from the top. They are, I would wager some are going to work in our favor and some are not. Again, back to more of what we can do to educate folks and engage with folks as an industry and as individuals to help them understand the impacts of these decisions or even lack of decision that sometimes becomes a comparable problem as well. And then these are the questions I would really kind of push back to the group to think through is really, how in tune are you with the elected officials that are representing your community? we were able to pass our 1169 bill. It was a blessing that we literally got it passed unanimously on both the House and Senate sides here in the state of Indiana. And that garnered and showed both Democrat and Republican support on both sides. We ended up with co-authors and co-sponsors of both parties. Might have been the only bill this session that passed unanimously like that. But it wasn't without a fight. There was definitely active engagement, active opposition. I think we took advantage of, and I'll say this openly and candidly, and I think we will continue to do so. We took advantage of the opportunity in front of us with the recent FireEye Solar Winds breach and the Colonial Pipeline breach. Things like that started to get folks awareness and really kind of put a lot of the legislators in a position of how do I vote against this? And I say respectfully, with I think a number of them not understanding the true impact of what we're trying to do and what we're focusing on, but knowing that cyber protection is something that's needed at all levels. And so they definitely were supportive and have come around us and have continued to have further conversations since its passing. And that law just went into effect July 1st of this year. So we're only about 3 weeks into it. And we've made some good progress, and a lot of our communities have started to engage with us, which is really a first for us here at the state, where our Office of Technology has not been aggressively engaged and connected with our local government technology officials. And that's something that in the spirit of collaboration and whole of state protection, I see as a huge priority for me and my tenure and for the state going forward as we try to work together for this problem. Secondly, as a technology leader, how involved and aware are you of legislative activity? And I get it. I think there were about 1,800 bills submitted this past session. And that's a lot to try and track and monitor. And I think there were just about 8 or 9 specific to broadband, let alone, a couple handfuls in other tech areas and such. It's not easy to do. It can be a pain in the butt. Hoping to find some ways that maybe we from the state can help share more of those technology specific ones with folks like you, so you can be more aware and have the ability to think about them and maybe even carry some messages to the elected officials that and help them help educate and prepare them for their committee hearings and their votes and such. And then lastly, when you think about the future of technology, do you see it being better driven by industry or by politics? And that's one that I would just leave that one where that's at and have everybody kind of think through that is that's a tough one for me. Because I know how much political conversations are occurring around technology topics and trying to understand, is this something that's better for a group or something that's better for the whole group? And do we ultimately provide funding for that to support that initiative, that goal, that priority? And in doing so, if we do provide funding for it, who do we negatively impact and who do we end up having an adverse effect on? It's not an easy conversation. But I am more happy to be in that conversation with a tech background and want more folks like me in that conversation as well. Because the alternative is other drivers with other priorities pushing forward other agendas that don't always work in our favor. So with that, I would love for this conversation to continue with any and everyone interested. We do have a very good relationship with the majority of our elected officials. Like I said, there's about 150 on the legislative side. We don't know them all. We interact with a ton of them. I've interacted with a lot of them over the years. Our 5 separately elected offices now, from governor, treasurer, auditor, secretary of state, Attorney General, their engagement and their activities and actions related to policy and the tech space. A lot of them are very open and interested in hearing feedback and hearing conversation, having roundtables and things of that nature. So would love to work with you guys, Doug, and figure out a way to maybe bring some of those folks to the fold and help them understand more of what does cloud actually mean? What does emerging technologies mean? And how do these and can these have a positive impact on the future of our communities and of our citizens? And more than happy to be a part of an ongoing conversation around this topic. So with that, I'll end and wrap up unless there are questions.
There's a few questions, Tracy. One comment from Jeff Helm up at Youth Opportunity Center in Muncie. He said one of his mentors was fond of saying, "No one is safe when the legislature is in session."
Amen.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jamie Yost asks, why would anybody be against broadband? What's the argument against broadband?
Trying not to name names here. There are some individuals and organizations that believe that their technology already provides sufficient coverage for everyone who wants it. And so it's not against broadband as a tool, it's against broadband from other organizations and from the government being engaged in helping push broadband for areas that are looking for certain types of coverage. A number of states have been fighting this challenge for a while, right? There's satellite, there's wireless, there's fiber, there's copper. All of them provide some level of coverage, and depending on the different players in those different industries, feel that the other tools are worthless and not necessary. Our copper folks are saying that it's more than enough and capable of doing a good 10-1, and that's all some people need to be able to do school online. Yeah, I see you shaking your head, right? I had that argument with one individual. Another group who is heavy in wireless thinks that wireless can cover the entire state, despite the fact that we have trees and hills, which kind of interfere and slow down and disrupt the signals being passed and such. And that 5G is going to fix everything, which is not practical and has such a short distance and capabilities. And so they end up, believe it or not, they end up fighting against that growth and expansion because they're more fearful of their technology not being included or not being the primary solution, as opposed to them saying that, well, if they say everything's already covered with what they have, then maybe the state will back down. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's great.
It was, and I'm gonna tell you, it was a disheartening. It was a number of disheartening conversations when you sit and talk with, individuals which they have some level of intelligence, right? It's like, how do I really have this conversation? And you're making this claim that just absolutely does not make sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Are there online resources or e-subscriptions to help regular old citizens like us maintain an awareness of legislative activities, Tracy?
That's a good question. I do know the General Assembly has their website and they push information out, but I don't know to what level of detail they do. I know we get access to some information. Let me look into, I don't know whoever asked that. If you could, Doug, follow up with me on that. I'd love to see if I can dig into that and come up with an answer there. And if not, there are a couple of groups and associations that I know. There's the Association of Indiana Cities and Towns, the Association of Indiana Municipalities. There are different groups that definitely gather and corral a lot of that legislative information when they are in session. But overall, I don't know if there is, and that might not be a bad initiative that we can potentially look to take on to try and help us stay more. The tech space has not historically been looked at as an area of policy, and that drives me nuts because locals, small businesses, organizations are looking to the state for guidance on how something should be done and how something should be handled. And we've not taken that ownership. I mean, these are conversations I'm having with the governor and his team right now of, I'm not saying we have to write rules to fix the problems that are out there, but I guarantee you, in the lack of us providing guidance, industry people are going to provide it. And they're going to provide it different ways to different cities and towns. And we're not going to get any cohesive collaboration at the state level if we don't step in and say, hey, this is what we're looking for and what we consider as a base level of protection and expectation.
How can we as individuals support what you're doing and make the state a better place?
It's that engagement, right? It's sharing feedback and input on some of these topics from your district House representative, your district Senate representative, your district federal congressional representative, and your district federal senatorial representative. Share letters and stories and thoughts with them. I mean, they need to understand and hear from, and I say this all with all due respect, because I'm one of them, just like you guys, from the feet on the ground, the boots on the ground, what these changes and what these decisions actually mean, and are they implementable or not? I mean, are they practical? What are they really trying to accomplish? And with doing what they're putting forward, is it even possible to get there? Sharing that message with them. When session comes into play, our state session goes from typically January to March in non-budget years, and January to April in budget years. There's extra time given to fight through all the budget challenges and battles. I'm trying to get us to have a good technology industry day at the legislative session so that we can have tables and have areas and have networking and conversations set up with officials to understand more of what we're doing. I'm trying to engage more and try to create more opportunities for those folks to see and hear. If we can do some maybe road shows and go out across the state with the local officials in those areas to help them understand what it is we're seeing as challenges and what we're trying to accomplish. Any of those things, and just the volunteering participation and helping share that message. Yeah, I say this respectfully, right? Is I start becoming a bit of a white noise when I keep saying it over and over and over myself. And as a state agency, right, you know, there's not always a lot of respect from hearing it from the inside as there is when folks like you guys are saying it from the outside of, it ain't about saying, hey, Tracy is right. It's about saying, hey, do you realize what you're doing? And do you realize what this means? Being able to help engage like that would go a long way as well.
Thanks so much for your time, Tracy. Ashley, thanks for your time as well. Great eye openers, both talks right now. I will be following up with all of you via email on the presentations that you saw today, and a link to the recording of this meeting so you can follow up. Don't forget the two events that are upcoming: the Indiana Gun Club, the fun event for us on August 4th, and then the September 21st IT leaders featuring Jose Martinez and Mike Mead. Jose's from One America and Mike Mead's from CNO Financial. I am grateful to each and every one of you for attending. I think this community has been amazing through the time at home in the last 15 months. And, you know, frankly, I wasn't sure that we'd all stick together and be able to stay together as a group and to show benefit. And you've done an amazing job on that. I dearly look forward to being again. So I look forward to that in September. Tracy, Ashley, thank you for sharing. Everyone, have a great day. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're all quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Doug. Good seeing you.
Yeah, good seeing you, Tracy. I appreciate the chat, and thank you for making time for us. It's so difficult these days.
No, yeah, absolutely. Good topics and good session. So we still need to get caught up at some point. Hopefully as this summer maybe settles down, we'll be able to make something happen.
I'll reach out. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.